There is a moment in every human life when something inside you speaks before your mind has time to think. A pull you can't explain, a warning you can't justify, a quiet knowing that arrives with the speed of light, yet asks for nothing in return. Most people dismiss it. You didn't. That's why you're here. And if you stay with me, by the end of this video, you will not only understand what that voice is, you will know how to use it correctly. Not vaguely, not accidentally, but deliberately, with clarity, trust, and precision. The greatest secret about intuition is that it never whispers randomly, it whispers consistently. You just live in a world loud enough to bury every subtle truth your body tries to show you. Think about it. How many times in your life did you feel something was off, long before you had evidence? How many times did you sense a yes or a no before your mind built its arguments? How many times did you tell yourself, I knew it, I just didn't listen? Intuition doesn't fail you. You fail to create the silence required to hear it. And yet, even now, even after years of conditioning, distraction, logic, noise, and stress, that inner signal still rises through you in flashes. It cuts through the fog with no explanation and no hesitation, as if it remembers something your conscious mind forgot. That moment, that single spark of knowing, is not guesswork. It is not magic, and it is not a soft fantasy of the spiritual world. It is biology. It is pattern. It is memory. It is your nervous system speaking with a depth of intelligence older than language itself. Intuition is not the opposite of logic. It is the origin of logic. It is what happens before thought, before analysis, before you begin the long process of convincing yourself out of what your body already knows. Intuition is the one-step leap your mind takes when it has seen this pattern before, even when you don't consciously remember it. And that is why in the next movements of this video, I will take you deep into the science behind this sense. You will understand why it feels so real and why it can be so accurate, and why, despite all of this, you still hesitate to trust it. But before we go there, I want you to feel something right now in this breath. At the bottom of your inhale and the edge of your exhale, there is a place where your mind loosens its grip, a place where the noise softens, a place where the body becomes louder than the world. That place is where intuition lives. And today we begin the process of returning you to it. Because intuition is not a gift some people have and others don't. Intuition is a natural human sense, but only if you learn to listen to it without distortion. And somewhere in the next moments of this video, you will begin to feel the truth of that. You will feel the exact difference between fear, impulse, emotion, and intuition. And then, in a later movement, I will show you how to use your intuition correctly, deliberately, reliably, and without confusion. For now, I want you to simply realize this. You are not learning intuition, you are remembering it. Your whole life it has been speaking. And today you begin to hear it clearly. Intuition is not a miracle, it is not an accident, it is not a mysterious visitor that appears when the universe feels generous. Intuition is a system, a biological, psychological, and spiritual architecture that has been quietly shaping your decisions since the moment you took your first breath. And when you understand how this system works, your life begins to reorganize itself around a deeper truth. You were never meant to navigate reality with logic alone. Logic is the surface of consciousness. Intuition is the undercurrent. Your nervous system has always been far more intelligent than your thoughts. Inside you, right now, millions of signals are traveling through the spinal cord, the enteric nervous system of your gut, and the subtle fibers of interoception that run through the entire body. These signals are ancient. They do not think in language. They think in sensation, pattern, resonance. Your brain is listening constantly, even when you are not, and before you ever decide, before you ever figure it out, your nervous system has already mapped the probabilities and whispered the first step. This is what scientists call pattern recognition encoding. Every emotional experience you've had, every danger you avoided, every truth you discovered, every person you misread or understood instantly, all of it was catalogued inside the body. Not in the conscious mind, which forgets easily, but deep in the networks that fire beneath awareness. This is why intuition feels fast. Because it is. It bypasses the slow machinery of language and leaps directly into knowing. But intuition doesn't only live in biology. Carl Jung understood something profound, that the unconscious mind is a horizon we walk beside, not a vault hidden from us. There are layers of intelligence beneath your thoughts, symbolic, archetypal, emotional, that speak in images instead of sentences. Dreams, synchronicities, déjà vu, emotional resonance, sudden clarity. All of these are intuitive communications. They emerge from the deep strata of consciousness where logic has not yet formed, but truth has. Jung called intuition seeing with the soul, a perception of patterns before they materialize, a direct line of insight that bypasses the limits of linear thought. And what he understood, long before modern neuroscience could confirm it, is that intuition is not irrational. It is pre-rational, meaning it happens before your rational mind even begins its process. Intuition is not the opposite of reason. Intuition is the spark that reason tries to explain afterward. Your body knows, your mind interprets, but the knowing always comes first. And yet, there is a reason intuition feels slippery, inconsistent, unreliable. Modern life demands logic, productivity, urgency, noise. You were trained to silence your intuitive voice long before you understood what you were losing. You were taught to trust external authority more than internal authority. You were taught to prioritize speed over stillness. You were taught to analyze your way through life instead of sensing your way through it. So naturally, the muscle of inner knowing grew quiet, but it never died. Let's rotate the lens now from cerebral to somatic. I want you to feel the difference between logic and intuition in your actual body. Logic lives in the forehead, tight and focused. It narrows your awareness to a single point. Intuition lives low, in the chest, in the stomach, in the solar plexus. It expands instead of contracts. It softens instead of squeezes. Logic is tension trying to prevent mistakes. Intuition is awareness trying to guide you toward alignment. Place your attention gently on the center of your body. Do not push, just breathe. Notice the subtle sensations rising beneath the surface, the tiny shifts, the micro expansions, the faint contractions. This is where intuition speaks first, through physiology. A yes feels like opening, a no feels like closure, a warning feels like static, a truth feels like coherence. The body doesn't lie, it only whispers. Now let's widen the frame, from somatic to cosmic. Intuition is not only biological or psychological, it is energetic. There is a field of information around you at all times, a subtle matrix of signals, emotions, intentions, micro-expressions, electrical cues, even hormonal particles in the air. Your body is constantly reading these inputs every time you sense someone's mood before they speak. That is intuition. Every time you know someone is thinking of you before they call. That is intuition. Every time you feel off around a place, a person, a situation, that is intuition. You are decoding the world long before the mind begins its commentary. This is the part that most people never learn. Intuition strengthens when logic is no longer fighting it. When the mind stops trying to replace sensation with explanation. When the noise dissolves enough for the body to become audible again. At this point in the video, I want to anchor a truth inside you. Your intuition is not incomplete. Your listening is. And the next movements will take you deeper into the source of that blockage and then beyond it. Because intuition is not just something beautiful to understand, it is something powerful to use. But first, you must know this. Everything in you that has ever whispered, "I know this," without knowing why, was telling the truth. You have never been disconnected from intuition. You have only been disconnected from silence. There is a reason your intuition feels distant, inconsistent, or unreliable, and it has nothing to do with your ability to sense. It has everything to do with the world you were shaped inside. You were born intuitive, exquisitely so. A newborn reads energy before language. A child senses emotion before explanation. You came into this life with a perfectly tuned instrument, and then the world began detuning you, one subtle instruction at a time. Not out of malice, out of conditioning, survival, and speed. What feels like an inner weakness is actually the residue of a culture that never taught you how to hear yourself. Let's begin with the most overlooked truth. The modern world is built on noise. Visual noise, emotional noise, decision noise, digital noise. The nervous system evolved in forests, deserts, mountains, oceans, environments where signals were subtle and slow, where attention could deepen instead of scatter. Your biology was designed to perceive faint shifts in wind, temperature, breath, expression, intention. But your daily reality floods you with more stimuli in 1 hour than your ancestors experienced in an entire day. When the world is loud, the inner voice does not disappear, it is simply drowned. Neuroscience calls this perceptual filtering. Your brain filters out 99% of the sensory data available to you because if it didn't, you would be overwhelmed. But here's the cost. The brain doesn't just filter the noise, it filters the intuition too. Your inner signals, the micro-contractions, the gut shifts, the subtle expansions, get buried under layers of cognitive clutter. You didn't lose your intuition, you lost the conditions it requires to be heard. And then there's stress, the silent saboteur. When cortisol rises, the body enters survival mode. Blood flow is rerouted away from the regions responsible for creativity, pattern recognition, and emotional attunement. The intuitive pathways dim. Your body might sense the truth, but your awareness cannot access it. Stress doesn't kill intuition, stress blinds you to it. This is why your intuitive clarity feels strongest when you are calm, rested, and grounded. When the body is regulated, the inner voice becomes luminous. But the loss goes deeper than biology. It lives in psychology, imprint, and childhood memory. From a young age, you were taught to override your inner signals. You were taught to be polite instead of perceptive, obedient instead of authentic, logical instead of embodied. You were told, don't be sensitive, don't overreact, don't trust your feelings, don't make things up, don't be dramatic. And each time you swallowed your inner truth, your system learned to silence the signal. Not because it wasn't there, but because expression wasn't safe. Some of your earliest intuitive moments were dismissed by adults who didn't understand their own intuition. Some of your deepest inner truths were contradicted by people you depended on. And a child will always choose belonging over self-trust. That is how the first fractures appear. Intuition doesn't weaken, trust does. And later in life you feel the consequence. You sense something, but you doubt it. You know, but you hesitate. You feel, but you talk yourself out of what your body already told you. Let's move somatically for a moment. Feel this. Imagine how many times your stomach tightened around a truth you ignored. Imagine how many times your chest contracted around a boundary you didn't voice. Imagine the thousands of micro moments your breath shortened because your intuition whispered no, but your mind insisted on yes. Your body kept the score. Every ignored signal became a layer of static. Every dismissed knowing became an interruption in the intuitive circuit. The system never stopped speaking. You simply learned to stop responding. Now widen the lens further, see it's into the collective field. You live in a society that worships logic, productivity, speed, measurable outcomes. Intuition contradicts all of these. Intuition asks for stillness. Logic asks for evidence. Intuition asks for coherence. Society asks for efficiency. Intuition asks for alignment. Culture asks for performance. You are surrounded by people who trust the rational mind far more than the embodied one. And without realizing it, you inherited their doubt, their mistrust, their over-reliance on thinking. But here is the cosmic layer, the part you feel but rarely articulate. Intuition fades not because you are disconnected from yourself, but because you are disconnected from the field. The natural world strengthens intuition. Human environments weaken it. Trees emit chemical signals that regulate immunity and calm the nervous system. Oceans reset your rhythm. Mountains amplify perspective. Nature expands your perception by default. And when you are far from it, when you move fast, scroll fast, decide fast, you become disconnected from the subtle frequencies intuition relies on. So ask yourself this gently: how much of your confusion is truly confusion? And how much is the absence of silence? How much of your doubt is truly doubt? And how much is the residue of a world that conditioned you to mistrust yourself? Here is the truth you need at this exact moment in the video. Your intuition is not broken. It is buried. Under noise, under stress, under conditioning, under speed, under self-abandonment, under the mind's obsession with certainty. And once you understand the forces that silenced it, you can reverse them. Because intuition does not need to be created, it needs to be uncovered. And in the next movement, that is exactly what we begin to do. We enter the deep work, the remembering, the untangling of the layers, and you will finally learn how to use your intuition correctly. You cannot strengthen intuition by thinking harder. You strengthen intuition by listening differently, and everything you are about to learn is designed to shift you from using your mind as the navigator to using your entire being as the instrument. Because intuition is not a thought. Intuition is a direction, a sensation, a resonance, a signal. And when you learn to read that signal correctly, your life begins reorganizing itself around clarity instead of confusion. The first truth you must understand is this: intuition speaks first, the mind speaks second, fear speaks third. Every intuitive moment arrives in the same sequence. The very first impulse is pure. The very first feeling is unedited. It carries no story, no justification, no negotiation. It simply appears as a sudden pull, a sudden softening, a sudden contraction, a sudden clarity. Then only moments later, the mind tries to organize that clarity into logic, and then fear tries to dilute it into safety. This is why intuition feels fleeting. Not because it is weak, but because the mind and fear are fast. From now on, your task is simple. Trust the first response. Capture it before the mind begins its commentary. The first impulse is intuition. Everything after that is interference. To use intuition correctly, you must also understand where it speaks. Logic lives in your forehead, sharp, tight, narrow. Intuition lives lower in the chest, the belly, the solar plexus. Warm, open, expansive. A true intuitive yes feels like your body opening, your breath deepening, your chest growing spacious. It feels like warmth rising through you, even if the decision itself is challenging. A true intuitive no feels like a subtle collapse, a tightening in the gut, a shortening of the breath, a heaviness in the shoulders or jaw. The body does not lie, it cannot lie. Your nervous system is calculating truth faster than your conscious mind can keep up, and it delivers that truth through sensation. So when you face decisions, do not ask, does this make sense? Ask instead, does this expand me or contract me? Does my body open or close? Your body holds wisdom, your mind is still learning to respect. And once you feel the intuitive direction, then, and only then, invite your logic to support it. Logic is not the enemy of intuition. Logic is the structure that helps build a path around the intuitive pull. Most people try to make the mind choose the direction and the body simply tolerate it, but the correct order is the opposite. Let intuition choose the direction. Let logic handle the logistics. Intuition points, logic plans. When this sequence is honored, inner alignment becomes natural, but intuition cannot be accessed through constant stimulation. It requires stillness. Not hours of meditation, needed just enough space for the inner signal to rise above the noise. A single minute of silence can change the entire trajectory of your decision-making. Before you choose anything, pause, close your eyes, exhale slowly, let your shoulders drop and your breath soften. Then ask your body, not your mind, what is true for me right now? Within that silence, your intuitive signal will always appear. Over time, this practice becomes a gentle reflex, a soft recalibration into clarity. If the mind continues to override your inner knowing, you can bypass it through intuitive journaling. This is one of the fastest ways to reach the intuitive layer beneath conscious thought. Begin by writing your question at the top of a page. Place your hand on your chest or stomach. Then, without thinking, write the very first sentence that arrives. Stop as soon as the mind begins explaining. The first sentences are always the truth. The later sentences are the negotiations. When you do this consistently, the unconscious opens. Your intuitive voice becomes louder than your mental noise. Intuition also communicates symbolically, not just somatically. Dreams reveal emotions you've ignored. Synchronicities highlight paths you are aligned with. Repeating names, images, numbers, or ideas are not accidents. They are intuitive currents pushing upward, trying to reach the surface of consciousness. When something appears 3 times, treat it as guidance. Jung understood this deeply. He believed the psyche uses repetition to complete a pattern you have not yet consciously recognized. Your intuition, through symbols, is showing you the path before your mind can decode it. To know whether your intuition is truly speaking, look for alignment across your entire being. You will feel your body soften into truth. Your emotions will stabilize rather than spike. Your logical mind will not fight the direction. It will simply ask how to support it. And your future self will feel relieved, not burdened by the choice. When these layers come together, you are standing in intuitive coherence. When they don't, you are listening to impulse, fantasy, habit, or fear, not intuition. Remember this, you are not trying to improve intuition. You are removing what blocks it. Stress blocks it, noise blocks it, doubt blocks it, overthinking blocks it, childhood conditioning blocks it. Intuition is the natural state of the human mind. Interference is the learned state. And now that you are remembering how to listen, the interference will begin to dissolve. Next, we take everything you've uncovered and elevate it. We move from instruction into transformation, from understanding intuition into becoming the inner receiver that has always been waiting to awaken. You are beginning to feel something now, a soft return, a gentle remembering, a loosening inside the places that once felt tight or muted. This is not imagination. This is not coincidence. This is the reawakening of the inner receiver, the intuitive instrument that has lived inside you from the beginning. You are not learning intuition, you are reclaiming it. You are not constructing a new sense, you are clearing the static that covered what was always yours. Now that you understand the biology, the psychology, and the embodied mechanics of intuition, something deeper becomes possible, the shift into intuitive coherence. Coherence is not simply feeling calm or balanced. Coherence is when your body, your mind, your emotions, your subconscious memory, and your subtle energy field all move in the same direction. Coherence is the frequency where intuition sharpens its edges, where signals that were once faint begin to sound like truth instead of guesswork. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for information, electrical impulses, micro-expressions, hormonal cues, shifts in tone, changes in posture, emotional resonance, atmospheric tension, internal sensation. It is reading the world long before your mind gives you a narrative. When your system is coherent, that information passes through you clearly. When it is incoherent, intuition becomes distorted. Not because the signal changes, but because the instrument does. This is why the next stage of intuitive mastery is not about what you sense. It's about who you are when you sense it. If you are stressed, your instrument vibrates chaotically. If you are exhausted, your instrument becomes dull. If you are disconnected from your body, the signal has nowhere to land. If you are disconnected from the world around you, the field loses its clarity. To awaken the inner receiver, you must understand the field you are part of, the energetic, biological, and emotional ecosystem that intuition depends on. When you step into nature, for example, your intuitive pathways sharpen almost instantly. Trees release chemical signals that calm the nervous system. Ocean waves entrain your breath into coherence. Mountains expand your perceptual awareness. Natural environments slow your internal tempo until the subtle becomes noticeable again. This is not spiritual metaphor, it is physiological truth. When your body returns to the environment it evolved in, your intuitive sense returns with it. But nature isn't the only amplifier. Emotional alignment magnifies intuition too. When you are living in contradiction with yourself, when your actions oppose your desires, when your relationships diminish your energy, when your boundaries are violated, intuition becomes foggy. Not because it stops speaking, but because the static of self-betrayal drowns it. Every time you ignore your truth to maintain peace with others, you create dissonance inside yourself. And intuition cannot move clearly through dissonance. This is why intuition grows strongest when you live honestly, not just with others, but with yourself. Clarity aligns the field, truth aligns the field, integrity aligns the field. Intuition cannot thrive in a life that contradicts the self. When your outer world matches your inner world, intuition becomes effortless. This is the harmony the inner receiver has been waiting for. Let us move somatically for a moment. I want you to imagine the space beneath your sternum, the quiet center where your breath pools before rising again. Picture it as a small, glowing sphere, like the steady pulse of a distant star. This is the intuitive center. Not mystical in concept, but deeply biological. This is where interoception meets emotion, where your gut neurons meet your memories, where your deepest truths rise before language forms. As you breathe, feel that center expand gently. not with force, not with effort, but with recognition. This is where your inner receiver lives. This is where it listens. Now widen the lens. Imagine the field around you, the subtle matrix of energy and information you move through every day. You sense more than you admit. You feel people's intentions before they speak. You sense emotional tension before words arrive. You can feel the difference between someone who drains you and someone who nourishes you. You can feel the truth inside a situation before evidence appears. You have always done this. You simply didn't know how to name it. Intuition is the conversation between your inner field and the outer field. When both are clear, the dialogue becomes precise. This is why so many intuitive breakthroughs happen during stillness. In the shower, on a walk, during a quiet evening, as you fall asleep. In those moments, your field settles, your nervous system relaxes, and the inner receiver finally has space to translate subtle signals into conscious knowing. And there is one more layer. Desire, not impulsive desire, not emotional desire, but magnetic desire. Desire as the alignment of the head, heart, and gut. When your logic, your emotion, and your intuition all want the same outcome. When this alignment occurs, intuition becomes a guiding force rather than a confusing whisper. Magnetic desire sharpens the inner receiver because it tells your entire system what to prioritize. The world is full of information. Magnetic desire helps you filter signal from noise. It helps you recognize which intuitive impulses belong to your path and which belong to old patterns. The moment you align your internal world, physically, emotionally, and energetically, something profound happens. Your intuition stops feeling like a visitor and becomes a companion. It stops feeling like a whisper and becomes a current. It stops feeling like guesswork and becomes recognition. You are not awakening a new ability. You are removing the distance between yourself and the ability you've always had. The inner receiver is not forming, it is unfolding. Let's explore now what happens when that unfolding reaches its full expression. When intuition is no longer something you listen to, but something you become. When the seeking begins to dissolve, what remains is recognition, the sense that what you've been searching for was never outside you. It was never hidden behind layers of mystery or cosmic complication. It has always lived in the softest part of your being, waiting for you to grow quiet enough to hear it. This moment is arriving for you now, the moment where intuition stops being something distant and becomes something native, familiar, intimate. Throughout this journey, you have peeled back the layers that made your intuition feel elusive. You've seen how noise, conditioning, fear, and speed distort the signal. You've relearned the difference between the mind's commentary and the body's truth. You've felt the subtle expansions and contractions that speak more clearly than language ever could. You've remembered that your nervous system, not your thoughts, is your most ancient source of intelligence. And now you stand at a threshold where intuition becomes more than a tool, it becomes identity. Let us begin this final ascent with a simple truth. Intuition is not something you visit, it is something you embody. When the noise dissolves, when coherence returns, when your emotional world, your nervous system, and your deeper desires all begin moving in the same direction. Intuition becomes your default state. You shift from thinking your way through life to sensing your way deeper into it. You shift from needing certainty to trusting resonance. You shift from doubting the first signal to recognizing it as the purest expression of your inner alignment. To integrate intuition, you must understand what it actually feels like to live from it. Intuition brings a quality of quiet decisiveness. You speak less because you feel more. You hesitate less because clarity lives in your tissues. You release people, places, or paths not through force, but through resonance. You stop analyzing every possibility and begin gravitating instinctively toward what matches your frequency. You think less about the future, yet your choices become more aligned with it. You no longer negotiate with your truth, you follow it. Living intuitively does not mean living recklessly. It does not mean abandoning logic or ignoring emotional nuance. It means allowing intuition to be the first voice and letting logic be its partner rather than its gatekeeper. It means letting the body speak before the mind interrupts. It means letting your heart interpret the world before your fears attempt to rearrange it. It means returning to the natural order of human intelligence, where sensing precedes thinking and resonance precedes reason. And because intuition lives in the body, integration also happens through the body. So pause for a moment. Feel the inhale rising gently. Feel the exhale softening your edges. Notice how, when you bring your awareness inward, your attention naturally gravitates toward the center of your chest or the center of your belly. This is not random. This is where your intuitive network lives. This is where your interoceptive intelligence, emotional memories, and subtle sensations converge. And in this quiet breath, you are already tuning to it. Intuition does not announce itself. It harmonizes itself. It arrives like warm truth. It arrives like subtle coherence. It arrives like a quiet yes inside a noisy world. When you attune to intuition, you no longer search for signs outside yourself. Signs reflect what you already know. Synchronicities align with the path you already feel. Opportunities appear in the direction your body is already pointing toward. Intuition becomes the inner gravity that shapes your path, bending your reality toward resonance. And here is the part that completes your transformation. Intuition becomes strongest, not when you look for answers, but when you become receptive to them. The inner receiver you awakened in the previous movement now becomes your guiding force. You are not forcing clarity. You are allowing clarity. You are not chasing solutions. You are noticing which ones rise to meet you. Every moment becomes a conversation between your inner world and the field around you. You send a signal. The world responds. You adjust your coherence. The path reveals itself. This is the beginning of intuitive living, a state where you are no longer navigating life through tension, pressure, or overthinking, but through alignment, a state where your intuition and your environment move together like two currents, merging into one river. You become the instrument, the receiver, the translator, and the participant in the same breath. So let us close the loop now, not with complexity, but with simplicity. You began this journey thinking intuition was a whisper. Now you understand it is the language of your entire being. You began thinking you needed to develop intuition. Now you understand you only needed to remove what covered it. You began thinking intuition was fragile. Now you know it is foundational. The knowing has always lived inside you. The whisper has always been yours. The signal has always belonged to you. As you step back into your life, carry one practice with you. Create one moment of silence before every decision. One breath, one pause, one soft return to your body. Ask it gently, what is true for me right now? And listen for the first sensation that rises. Not the thought that follows, not the fear that interrupts, not the logic that rearranges. The first sensation, the first knowing, the first truth. If you honor that first signal, your intuition will grow louder. If you trust it, your life will grow clearer. And if you follow it, your path will begin unfolding with a precision you can feel, even before you can explain it. Because intuition is not a skill you practice. It is a relationship you return to, and now you are finally home.